Hi, welcome to this video for the Pride in Higher Aspirations project here at neaco Take Your Place. My name is Kit and I am a neaco Higher Education Champion. And I have the absolute delight of being joined by Joe, who works for the Norfolk LGBT Project. So welcome, Joe. It's absolutely lovely for you to be here today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So my name's Joe. I'm the LGBT trainer for the Norfolk LGBT Project. If you haven't heard of Norfolk LGBT Project, we are your local community charity, and we provide support for all ages. So our youngest is 4, our oldest is 84. We really work across the full spectrum. We work with all individuals depending on their specific needs. We also run a few specific programs. So we have support groups. We've got 2 transgender groups. We've also got our BLA youth groups, which when they're up and running are in different sections across Norfolk, but at the moment they're run via Zoom. So we've got an under 13s and an over 13s. We also have a parents group because it's really important that parents have a space to talk about supporting their LGBT young people as well. We've just started a multicultural group. Predominantly it's for asylum seekers at the moment. And then we've also got a lesbian and bisexual women's group, gay and bisexual men's group. And yeah, we also offer counselling and one-to-one support as well. So we will offer more tailored individual mental health support for those that need it. But one of the things that we really champion is we like people to tell us what they need, and we'll try and meet that need rather than us coming in and saying, right, we're going to put you here, you need this, this, and this. We want to be able to help individuals get back to how they need to be and also work in partnership with other services as well.
That's just, I really have a lot of time and affection for the Norfolk LGBT project, especially, you know, I'm in Norfolk and I work in Norwich for the University of East Anglia, and that little kind of overview you gave is absolutely fantastic because it just goes to show the diversity and the intersectionality of all the people that you work with. And so when it comes to the most of our target audience probably watching this, hello everybody, the young people, or maybe their parents, carers as well, and maybe some teachers of these high school students. And it's nice that we have these supportive elements in the community. So if we have any youngster who is considering going to further education, higher education, regardless of whether it is in their local area. So if any of you are thinking, for example, of coming to the University of East Anglia in Norwich, or the Norwich University of Arts, or any of the colleges in Norwich, for example, then you've got the Norfolk LGBT+ project to support you, as well as what they do in those establishments. So let's go down that route then, Joe. So you've got your own experience of higher education. So would you like to be able to tell us a little bit about when you were going through your higher education experience? What were the kind of examples of maybe the support that you had, and the clubs, the societies, and all those things for people like us?
Well, so my response to this is, because I can only speak from my own personal experience of accessing higher education, and my personal experience, I would say, isn't actually the example I'd like to set for individuals, but that's what I'm going to talk about, because there was LGBT societies at both of the universities that I attended around sort of 2012 to 2016. So, you know, it's a few years ago now, but I didn't attend either. At the time, I didn't attend the LGBT societies. I didn't go to those spaces. And looking back, I wish I really did take full advantage of them. I think initially I was put off societies as a concept. I never joined any. And now I can absolutely see the benefit of having peer support and also of having structured activities when you're kind of anxious and you're looking to make friends and you want to have a space and have a way to make those friendships and integrate yourself into a new space when you're away from home for the first time, if you're going to university as a school leaver, of course. I didn't have anything like that in school. I didn't have anything like that in college. So the LGBT groups and societies, that wasn't introduced to me from a young age. And now I know that certainly we work with over 25 schools across Norfolk, and we know that people are setting up LGBT groups, in school, in those spaces. People are getting used to the idea of peer support and its benefits. But yeah, I saw them as inaccessible, and I didn't really see their true value. I met my first girlfriend at university, then my second, but I think because I was out in terms of my sexuality, but still figuring out my gender as a transgender individual, I still felt different, and I didn't always feel affirmed. Like those group spaces, I found them intimidating, as I say. And
Yeah.
as my comfort zone was being an outsider, even though I had friends, I kept myself to that outsider group of friends because that was my comfort zone. That's where I felt safe. And I was okay with that at the time. And now I really regret not taking full advantage of those spaces. And I would recommend any young person to give LGBT spaces and give queer spaces a chance, and to recognize not only their importance, but also the work that's gone into making them, and that they weren't always there to take advantage of.
Yeah, there's two things I'd like to pick up on there, which I thought was really important. Well, the first thing is that you're absolutely right to recognise the fact that not all individual or young person is going to feel comfortable engaging, in social groups, or they find it very, very challenging to formulate new relationships. So any young person who's watching this may not necessarily not be thinking about higher education because they do or do not identify as LGBTQ, but maybe because they're worried of that aspect of making new friends, of new social groups. What if I don't fit in? And I was exactly the same. I discovered my identity really late, way later than I. And then when I think back to it, there was nothing in high school at all for me in the 80s and 90s with regards to your sexuality or your gender identity or anything like that. And when I came to the University of East Anglia, I was exposed to a lot of different groups of people, a lot of different characteristics and that diversity, and that helped me to understand that maybe I wasn't so strange, even though I still didn't know my gender identity at the time. But I think from your experience, what you're saying, and from my experience of what as an ex-high school teacher, that there is now that increasing openness and acceptance for students who do identify as LGBTQ, and to take comfort in that. And then when you get to higher education, there's even more of that diverse and that kind of thing there. So that's the first thing I would say. And the second thing is, higher education is a really good way, and further education, a really good way to try and push yourself outside your comfort zone, because you're more likely to find people you identify with. So, and I guess is that what you mean by the regret? Is that you could have formulated friendships and partnerships and relationships with people, but you didn't give yourself that chance, because it's important to feel safe and be in your comfort zone, of course, at the same time.
I was quite happy with my choices at the time, and I definitely felt I did make friends and I did have those relationships. But I, exactly as you've expressed, I think I very naively thought everyone else has this figured out. Everyone else has got it together. It's just me. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. I don't feel like I fit in. And I think that's actually, the older you get, you realize that's a very universal experience, just no one's talking about it. And it's creating those spaces where, it's okay to be like, you can introduce yourself and say, I am anxious. There's nothing wrong with that. In a way, people then understand that, and they've got that cue from you that that's something that you're going to carry with you, and they'll relate to you differently, and they'll go, okay, I'll go out of my way to accommodate that you're feeling a little bit anxious. But it's just getting the confidence in communicating that, you're not always going to be at your best in these situations.
And I guess the other thing as well, I think that both of our jobs, we're so important with safeguarding. And for young people, if you're not sure what safeguarding means, safeguarding is the people who have the responsibility for your well-being. Like Joe would have safeguarding training with regards to the youngsters that he works with. I've got safeguarding training with the youngsters I work with, and we are 100% behind the fact that you need to feel safe, secure, and supported. And we don't want anyone to think, well, if I go to higher education, because I'm uncomfortable meeting new people, or maybe you do identify as LGBTQ and you are not open, you're not able to express that. Maybe you're not out yet, and then you feel that going to HE might out yourself or something like that. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, just making new friends and getting those friendship groups, which allows you to be more of yourself, whether you do or don't identify as LGBTQ. Because I know that there are plenty of cisgender people and straight people who are in LGBT groups because they are very, very strong friends and allies. So it's not just necessarily other LGBTQ people that you might meet at higher education. So I think that's a very, very, I'm really, really delighted that we kind of got that message across about that feeling of safety and security. Would you say, therefore, that, and I know the situation is different for both of us because we're a bit older and our experience of high school is probably different from a lot of students watching this and their experience of high school. But would you say that, therefore, you felt more safe at higher education than you did at high school with regards to your emotional well-being and your mental well-being?
I think there was more support options,
Okay.
actually. I agree with the sense that I felt more free. I think that's actually what a lot of people experience going to university, especially for LGBT people. It might be the first time that you're able to express yourself. It might be the first time that actually being away from a difficult family environment, if you do have friends or family that are struggling with your identity, it gives you that freedom, it gives you that space, and it gives you different connections from outside the peer group that you, maybe a small group that you grew up with, but it'll expand your horizons hugely. And I think that there is a huge benefit to all of that freedom, as intimidating as it can be, which is it does allow you to have a little bit more ability to express yourself and explore sexuality and explore gender. Because I also think that sometimes we can feel that there is a pressure to decide upon a label, to decide upon a box, to know who we are, to figure it out. And I think actually one of the great things about going into higher education is it gives you that time and space, and you think, okay, I can try this, I can try that. And it gives you those years where, you don't have so many additional pressures. Hopefully you've got accommodation sorted. A lot of the pressures of living situation, of familial relationships, they're removed slightly. And I think that it just allows you a little bit of that space to grow.
As someone who works on supporting and giving advice, so say if we do have a young person watching right now who is considering going into higher education, do you have any, maybe from yourself or from the Norfolk LGBT Project's point of view, do you have any advice for any young person about what they should find out about a particular higher education institution? So, for example, I might say you'd want to find out what the university's policies on discrimination, on support, supporting students of certain characteristics, whether they are different sex orientations or gender identities or people of color, etc., etc. So that's the kind of thing, obviously, I would advise is like, and do they have confidence that university back up those kind of policies? Would there be any other advice or any other things you think that young people should research and look up to with regards to higher education?
Yeah, I mean, I think the discrimination policies are really important, as you mentioned, but also, when I was in university and I did face discrimination, because it does still happen, it's really important to say, there are still spaces in higher education and throughout your life where that will take place. Absolutely. And it may take place. But when it did happen, I didn't take full advantage of the policy because I wasn't aware of it. I didn't know what it meant in practical terms, and that's so important. The other thing I would really look up is student support, mental health support, health and well-being. I always look up, are these, is there anything LGBT mentioned on the website? what can I see that's been visibly inclusive and actually considered that might be a factor that someone is actually looking for, and maybe they're going out of their way to seek somewhere that is inclusive after some negative experiences. I think it's really important to look for the ones that have thought about that might be someone's experience and gone, okay, yeah, and sort of is actively inclusive and making that initial step by putting LGBT or LGBTQ on the website, including it in student services, including it in health and well-being. The other thing I'd really say is universities are massive, right? Like you can't figure out everything you need to know from a website. I would actually speak to, if you can, or just go online and try to find people that have gone not only to the university, but to the department you're looking at. Because even within universities, inclusivity can vary from departments to departments. They will have different sort of structures. They'll be led by different people. And it's really great to get, if you can, an ex-student's experience. When I was trying to decide which university to go to, one of the things that influenced my decision was because none of my family went to university, so I didn't have any experience of higher education. I didn't know who to talk to. But someone, I went there, older sibling had went there and had a really positive experience with a similar department, and that was really beneficial to me. And I think looking not only for broad experiences of people's experience at that university, like accounts online, you can find them, they're out there. But yeah, also the mental health support and well-being, because you might not need it now, but 3 years is a long time. 3-4 years is a long time to spend at university. You might need it later down the line. It's good to know it's there.
Although I wish it didn't go so quick, though, for me. I do miss my time as an undergrad. Yeah, and to add to your advice, I would say that you are, any student, prospective student, not just anybody who identifies a certain way, should feel absolutely empowered to say, could I please look at your policy? Can you send me a copy of your policy of this, that, and the other? It doesn't necessarily have to be about discrimination, stuff like that, but can you send me, so I know what takes place, or what's, can you send me a list of support services? Contact the student union, and almost every single higher education establishment will have a student union pride group. I can't think of a university which doesn't, really, to be honest. So, and usually that information is on the student union's website of whatever higher education establishment or further education establishment that you're thinking about, and they would be so happy to talk to you. So if any of those 6 universities, for example, that you put on your UCAS form, contact all of their student unions and their pride groups or LGBTQ groups, because they will be delighted to hear from you, and then they will give you honest. Trust me, student unions will give you honest responses. They're very, very good, because they've got the students' well-being in mind, and they're democratic. The vast majority of occasions they're democratically elected by their peers, by fellow students. Joe, this is absolutely fantastic chat. We do have to bring it to a close, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask you one final question, and that's quite simply, what would be, so we could have someone who's 13 watching this, maybe 18, 19, who have about to or will submit their UCAS application for further and higher education. What would be your last nugget of advice, or last bit of top tip that you may give?
I think from personal experience, as someone who did struggle with their mental health at university, I actually did have a suicide attempt at university, and I think I'm happy to talk about it, and I think I should talk about it, because it might not be only my experience. And anyone that is struggling with their mental health, do make sure that you are talking to people about it, that you access student support, that you access counselling, that you access advice services. What I did wasn't necessarily the way I'd recommend someone to go about it. I had one counsellor, and I had a bad experience with that counsellor, and it put me off accessing any further support. And then the mental health system that I had to navigate, it made it much more difficult. So take full advantage of the people that are there, to advocate for you, that totally have experience of feeling exactly what you're feeling, all of the difficulties you're going to face. No doubt someone else has experienced that before you and is so happy to go out of their way to make sure that you don't have to experience that, or to handhold you through it if you are going through the same things. Just remember that mental health support, just like LGBT identity, is kind of a continual process. There's no final destination. There's no one time where you're going to have it all figured out. It's something that you manage. It's a process. It's a process of continual becoming and management. And you notice over time that actually going through those tough things, that resilience, it becomes that kind of superpower. So you've already got through a difficult time maybe in high school. You've got through a difficult time maybe in college. All of those things, they add up, and you realize that you can actually overcome any difficult time just through that resilience, just through getting through it. And that's the superpower that helps you for the future. I would wish you the best of luck in knowing that you are strong enough to get through a difficult time, and you'll come out the other side of it, and it will have taught you so much, even if it's not what you expected to get out of your time.
Joe, I just want to say on behalf of everyone watching, thank you so much for sharing your personal experience and being vulnerable with us from what you said. And if anybody does feel particularly affected or wants to make sure that they feel supported by what Joe's been talking about, then what I'll make sure that happens is that there's a link or two in the description of the video so you can access some support that you may need. Joe, that's absolutely wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much again for your personal experience. And actually, if we can finish off, maybe if you can give the website for the Norfolk LGBT Plus project, that would be wonderful so people can check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to get in touch with any of us about training, support, advice, access any of our groups, access any of our support, it is norfolklgbtproject.org.uk.
That's absolutely fabulous. Thank you for joining me today, Joe.
Thank you.